let's deal with the elephant in the room, the question that white people watching this are probably having. Brandon, I'll start with you. Are there more N-words than regular black people? Are we outnumbered?
Well, man, you put me on the spot. Some people ain't gonna like what I have to say.
That's what this show does.
I'd say, unfortunately, I think that there's a slight majority that's N-words. I think that it's a dwindling population. And the reason I say this, because you can look at voting, and it can be somewhat of a determining factor. You can look at the way black women vote, which is astronomically outrageous in my personal opinion. So with those voting numbers and with things that I see online, even when I was a police officer, I think unfortunately there's a good majority of black people who are like that. And I think that there's a small group of, or not say small group, but just a slight minority group of black people who are with it. Black people who understand politics, black people who love this country and that are willing to stand up on principle. I mean, I feel like I'm the only one out here half of the time, other than the people on this panel, but it seems like we're the few out here that's willing to say, no, Angel Reese is wrong for what she did. Or Angel Reese is not as good as Caitlin Clark. It's not a race issue. You know, Shedeur Sanders not getting drafted in the first round or the first overall pick. I knew he wasn't gonna get drafted first overall way back when he was playing. Anybody that know football know he wasn't gonna get drafted there. He shouldn't have. His attitude and character is bad. So, you know, it's not a lot of us saying this. And the ones that say it, we get called Uncle Tom Coon sellouts. We get shamed for marrying white women or whatever the case may be. So I feel like it's a slight minority of us that are with it. Unfortunately, 51% is probably need to get on board.
Delano, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'll ask it differently. More ninjas or more Negroes? And Wilfred, prepare to answer this question.
I mean, in my personal experience, it's definitely more Negroes than ninjas. But I'm not blind to the reality that many ninjas exist. I will say this though, because I want to be honest in terms of the conversation. The whole notion of black fatigue, at least as it relates to the social media phenomenon of black fatigue, is not just a ninja conversation. Because I see plenty of, accounts where it'll be a room full of black doctors or engineers, young people, and somebody will get on there and say, "Oh, but let me see your MCAT. Let me see your GRE scores. I bet they were lower than the average white person." So, at least again, and I'm separating social media from real life, because I don't get most of this stuff in my real life. I mean, I certainly see some ninja activity in my real life. But in terms of the tension, the racial tension, I don't have that in my real life. And part of that is just the circles I'm in, the neighborhood I live in, the people that I'm around, so on and so forth. But the online phenomenon is not just criticism of ninja activity. It's criticism of black people in prominent positions and the notion that they got there because they did not have the same they had lower qualifications than some of their white peers. And I've seen that, and I've responded to some people, some of them very well-known white conservatives, by the way, asking them to sort of explain how they drew certain conclusions. So I'll put a pin in.
Let me ask you this. Let me put a small pin and ask you a follow-up. Because things in American culture are so divided along political lines, and I think inappropriately divided along political lines, that perhaps what your black doctors, lawyers, professionals, professors, so many of them are leftists, that there's a fatigue from people on the conservative side of just like, hey, when are you going to acknowledge that this leftist stuff, this destruction of the nuclear family, blah, blah, blah. And so black doctors, lawyers, intellectuals, college professors, many of them all believe that racism explains everything, and there's a fatigue over that among conservatives that are like, nah, man, the destruction of family explains everything, or all these negative outcomes. And so that maybe that the pushback is about your political ideology being leftist, and they believe there's a denial of the realities. Like, yeah, y'all want to keep going down that Marxist leftist route, and then keep complaining that you're not getting the results that people in traditional families are getting, there's a fatigue over that, the denial of just factual truth. God intended for man and woman to be married and raise their children. And if you don't do that, you're going to see a lot of people tatted up with pants hanging off their rear end, smoking weed, and being very rude to people in public.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see criticisms of leftists, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to say leftist, don't say black, right? If you have ignorance fatigue, then say ignorant. But once you put a racial descriptor on, and again, the things that I'm seeing or the issues that I'm referring to are not ones where someone is pushing back on a black person, blaming racism for why black people are not further ahead. I'm talking about, again, it's a room full of people that no one knows. Or if you get on a plane and you're a conservative influence, you say, oh, I just saw that there's a black pilot. Oh, pray to God that the plane lands safely. That's not an issue of, ninja behavior. Or I'll give another example, and I name names just so people don't have to guess what I'm talking about. During the election last year, when Charlie Kirk referred to Lloyd Austin, right, as a DEI hire, my question is, in what sense is Lloyd Austin a DEI hire? He has all of the qualifications that all the previous secretaries of defense had. But if DEI is stand-in, and DEI I think is part of the black fatigue phenomenon, if DEI is a stand-in for black people on the center left in prominent positions who I believe got there primarily because of their skin color, then you got to own that. So I'm a big person in not conflating different issues. And yes, as somebody who has lived in and around cities my entire life and worked and much respect to Officer Tatum, because he was out there on the front lines as a police officer. My last year in city government in DC was at the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And yes, I did have fatigue with every single morning, the police captain, one of the captains or higher up saying, young black male, young black male, young black male for both perpetrator and victim. Yes, I did get fatigued by that. But some of the stuff I see online is not just about what black people are doing. It's the notion that black people are being in a particular space at a particular time.
Wilfred, what do you think of my argument? I'm going to ask you to arbitrate this. What do you think of my argument that perhaps some of that is just like, take me. I'm fed up with leftist, Marxist, feminist mentality. And there is a certain group that at like a 94, 95% clip seems to be in support. Feminism, leftist, Democrat Party, blah, blah, blah. And so we've been stereotyped, people with our skin color, as like, you support the entire leftist agenda, and I'm frustrated by it.
Yeah, I think there's a mix of things going on, and that is one of them. But I think Delano also made a pretty good point. I will say on my social media, I've been arguing with the feminists in particular for the past couple of weeks about these crazy issues like, is your husband wanting sex a form of slavery? So, I mean, I think there's a lot of lunatic nonsense out there. And I do think black people are associated with that. But I took a couple notes on this pad here. One, I don't think that there are more ninjas, as we're all politely saying, than Negroes in the black community. I think if you look at, we sometimes overhype this black women are the most educated group and so on. They're actually third. But there are a lot of just normal black people in this country. I think all of us are pretty representative, actually. You go down to the police station, which I do as an academic. We're trying to get young men jobs. You're going to see about 30% black cops, and they're just going to be hanging around BSing with the white cops. I mean, they're a very large number of normal people. Also, like I said, living in Kentucky, and I don't want to insult my neighbors, but you really do see that ninja behavior is pretty cross-racial. I mean, down here, if you're playing basketball across the street from a trailer park and there's someone sitting on the porch in a quote-unquote wife beater drinking a 40-ounce, the odds they're black are like 1 in 8. I mean, and you can see that in the income stats for Appalachia, so on. So I think everyone needs to be critical of that kind of thing from a religious perspective, political perspective, policing perspective. The second thing I noted down is that social media is a really enhanced version of reality. So the black crime rate is about twice the white crime rate right now. And everyone records these videos of fist fights at their high school and this kind of stupid thing, stuff that happens once every 100 days, maybe. and they upload that to social. And you're going to see a disproportionate number of black people involved in that. And that is definitely going to make people have a more critical view of black people. And that's going to spread over to other things. So I agree with Delano that when you see maybe the scores at Howard are 5% lower than the scores at Penn or something, but when you see a bunch of black doctors graduating, there's not inherently a reason to greet that with any negativity at all, right? But the reaction is I'm now associating that with these videos I've seen. I'm now associating that with these headlines about affirmative action in the conservative press. They don't deserve to be there. And that is really an online thing where blacks, whites, everyone sees this enhanced reality and get mad, scream at each other. People say stuff on social media they would never say in reality because they can't get punched in the face on a computer. So, I mean, everyone is just incredibly negative, incredibly polarized. I do think a third thing, though, like something I would actually take the black community to task for, is that ninja behavior may be nearly as common among Appalachians or Hispanics or Native Americans, certainly if you've ever been to the res. But I do think in the black community alone, there's this idea of kind of glorifying it. So a lot of people get shot by the police. Black people are only about 20% of the people that get shot by the police. You have a ton of Irish, Italian, Native, Mexican, Puerto Rican, whatever criminals, but you can't name any of them, right? Like there was a conscious movement to make George Floyd into a cultural icon. I mean, that was not ideal policing, but George Floyd's also on fentanyl. He's on meth. He has active COVID. No other ethnic group would be building bronze statues of that guy. And I do think that's a problem that we need to address. There are like 3 George Floyd monuments by this point. So hood behavior, very common, a little more common among us, but we keep promoting it as authentic. And especially for the fathers out there, that's an enormous problem.
Help us grow the Fearless Army. Pound that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with all your fearless friends.